This idea of Swiftynomics, what I'm trying to do is honor Taylor Swift fans, especially when she started the Eras Tour. There was all these news stories about Taylor is propping up the economy. And I just kept on thinking to myself, Taylor isn't propping up the economy. It's her fans.
Welcome to Pop Syllabus. I'm your host, Christiana Mbakwe Medina. No one can deny that Taylor Swift has built a massive empire in a male-dominated field. Her financial influence is widespread, and she's one of the most successful businesswomen in American history. So how can more women follow her lead? And can they? Today, economist and professor Misty Heggeness joins me to talk about her book, Swiftynomics, How Women Mastermind and Redefine Our Economy. Misty Heggeness, welcome to Pop Syllabus.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you for coming. You're an economist, an associate professor in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Kansas. And your new book, which has become one of my recent favorites, is called Swiftynomics, How Women Mastermind and Redefine Our Economy.
Yes.
I'm excited to get into, but before all of that, you used to be a federal economist. You come from very wonky and technical world.
Yes, total wonk, I admit it.
And you've had jobs at the Census Bureau, stuff that we don't necessarily even associate with women. I'm sure maybe you were
and even less with pop culture.
Less with pop culture. So how did you get interested in studying the economics of Taylor Swift?
Yep.
And then I also want to know, are you a Swiftie? Because that shapes your lens.
Yes.
Because if you're if I'm going to write about Beyonce and I'm in the Beehive, it's going to be very different if I'm writing about Beyonce and I don't like her.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Yeah. So I won't keep you in suspense. I am a Swiftie. I consider myself a Swiftie. Big fan of Taylor. I'm happy to tell you that story of how I got into. So it wasn't until 2019 that I started really paying attention to Taylor.
Late adopter.
Yes. I just came across the music video for The Man from her Lover album. And yes, I was a wonky, nerdy research economist at the Census Bureau in the federal government. And I was working as a senior advisor for the chief scientist of the organization. So I was leading a lot of new projects. I was managing a portfolio, and the song The Man, I saw the video and I just felt like she had written about my life.
Wow.
It was just so relatable.
Yeah.
I just really felt like the experiences that I had been having in a statistical agency that was predominantly older white men, and all of the ways in which, as I was trying to ascend, as I was trying to become a leader and become a boss and take over projects, the ways in which people would attack me when I was trying to do something that they didn't want me to do was very different than the way that they would respond to my male colleagues when my male colleagues asked them to do something. And so,
which is very relatable, I'm sure all the women listening at home can
common
relate to
experience.
That.
And so that's when I started following Taylor. And then during the pandemic, she came out with Folklore and Evermore. And I was like, who is this productive queen who is producing 2 music albums, and the rest of us are, sitting on our couch in our PJs, day drinking wine, trying to survive.
I mean, that's also a worthy pursuit in the time when there's a pandemic and you might die. So,
Most definitely. So then I just really started paying close attention to her career because I just felt like she had been doing some things that were different that had helped her survive and thrive. And that's how I got into Taylor. And I'm, my area of research and expertise is on gender and the economy. And I've just been following all of the stories in the news media about what was happening with women and mothers during the pandemic in terms of paid work. And I was seeing different stories in the data. And so I really wanted to write a book that talked about the modern woman. And Taylor just seemed like an obvious muse for the book because of, those 2 ideas for me just aligned.
And I'd like to say, why Swiftynomics, because there's other women that you can think of that you could be maybe they're economic drivers, or maybe they represent something, I don't know, the woman that used to run The Wing, or the woman that runs Bumble. What is it about Taylor Swift in particular that as an economist you were drawn to her?
Yeah, so a couple of things I would say. So first of all, this idea of Swiftynomics, it's really what I'm trying to do is honor Taylor Swift fans. And one of the reasons why I do that is because, especially when she started the Eras Tour and, there was all these news stories about, Taylor is propping up the economy. And I just kept on thinking to myself, Taylor isn't propping up the economy. She is amazing and successful and talented, but she's not propping up, these local economies. It's her fans who are willing to go and pay the money to see the concert and pay the money to travel there and stay in hotels. And it's really her fans who have a whole bunch of economic agency today that, you know, and we're willing to spend it on, you know, entertainment and things that give them joy. And so the Swiftynomics is really trying to honor the fans and the fact that women today have more discretionary spending than they've ever had in the past. Women's spending patterns today are so much more different than they historically might have been. So that's kind of how the concept came around for, and it's the reason why I don't have a picture of Taylor on the cover of my book.
Yeah.
I do think that she is an excellent muse, and you'd asked me that question, you know, at the beginning of this. But the reason why I think she's such a great muse is because ever since she was 14 years old when she started in this industry, she's had a lot of ability to resist and persist. When she first started in the industry, she went to Nashville and she wanted to write and sing songs about the teenage, you know, young white women teenage experience. And basically country music execs were like, we don't think that there's any money in that. We don't think that that's a consumer base that we're interested in. And she signed up on RCA for a development contract. And she took herself out of that development contract and did something very risky, which is she went with somebody else who was starting up his own company. And she signed with him because he agreed to let her sing and produce the songs that she was writing. So he agreed to let her write stories about the experience of young teenage girls and sing about them. And the thing that's so really unique about Taylor is, I don't think it was intentional, but she really was able to tap into a moment in time when, you know, women's educational attainment was accelerating. When, you know, the women growing up with her, they're less likely to get, you know, they marry later in life, less likely to have kids, more likely to have careers than jobs. So there's so much momentum in women, young women as an economic force, young millennial women as an economic force. And Taylor has really, you know, since the beginning of her career, since all of those millennial girls were teenagers, Taylor has tapped into that.
It's interesting that you put it that way, because that is a very fair reading, and I think it's an accurate reading. But what I immediately think is, when I see Taylor's economic story, I think it's a story of economic privilege. Like what happens when that gumption intersects with the type of parents that have the means to be like, we're going to move from Pennsylvania to Nashville. And a father that's like, I'm going to be your investor, and kind of be like, she's had these very,
it's clear that all the stars aligned for her.
All the stars aligned for her. And it kind of, her story to me, I always think, because like, I think she unfairly gets dunked on, and some people say she has no talent. It's rubbish. She's very talented. And she gets dunked on for her privilege. And I think the story is, when you take a girl who has potential and she's planted in the right soil at the right time, look what she can accomplish. And have parents that believe in her, because let me tell you something, I got Nigerian parents. If I told them I wanted to move to another city to sing, it's not going to happen. It was like, like that would never happen.
No, I mean, I think the majority of parents wouldn't be willing to take that risk.
But also like, that's like, it's like remarkable parent. It's like an economic story that I think tells us so much about like how society should perhaps ideally raise children. Like if your kid has this dream, maybe you do support it, rather than say like, you need to do this thing. So I think like this story of like stars aligning within this timing explains so much of like her success.
Yeah, but I also think just to recognize that in order to be a parent who really harnesses that, you really do have to be somebody who has a lot of resources, who like taking that risk is manageable for you. And there's a lot of families out there who, even if they wanted to do that for their kid, like taking the risk isn't, you know, financially manageable or feasible for them.
And you know, I'm jumping ahead and we'll get back to it. One thing I kept coming back to when I was reading the book, I'm like, how do we scale Swiftynomics? How do we make it scalable, that it's a possibility for lots of girls and lots of young women? And what you said earlier about, you know, parents would perhaps have the desire but not the resources, or sometimes you don't even know, like, I should put this kid in a class to learn the guitar. Like even that takes a level of awareness and resources and to be able to pay for the guitar lessons. And as someone who has a 2-year-old in piano lessons, they're very expensive.
Yeah, and even you have to have a place near you that has, lessons in guitar.
Yeah.
So, I think it's all relevant. The one thing from an economics perspective, I would say is when people often think economics is all about finance and banking and Wall Street, but that's like just one small sliver of what the field of economics is. And really, at the end of the day, economics is about trying to help people make the best decision for their own kind of utility or happiness or, whatever you want to call it, given the resources that they have in front of them. And when we think about how do we best spark economic development and growth, what's the best way that we increase well-being for all in society, it's really about matching people's skills and talents with either the types of jobs that are out there available or the types of artistic, creative, and innovative things that we want to be doing as a society. So I think that there's a lot of merit in this idea of, how do we best align kids with a certain skill set, and even more, it's not even a skill set. It's like, how do we align kids with a burning passion to do X with the ability to help them grow within this field of X. And, we don't focus enough on doing that in this country and probably just anywhere around the globe.
Much of the world.
Yeah.
So when I think about women with massive financial power and influence, it's like Oprah, Kim Kardashian, Gwyneth Paltrow, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, they have all kind of built their empires through pop culture. Yeah. Why do you think pop culture is the thing, that the mechanism that seems to be the way to build $1 billion empire? And I'm curious if you see, as an economist, you see women doing that in fields that like the women and girls listening at home have never heard of, like who's doing that in finance or tech or,
Yeah. So, it is happening in finance, it's happening in venture capital, it's happening in journalism. And I write about some of those stories in my book. I think what's happening today, I've got a whole theory about this, but I think, we have to look back in history as to like what the experiences of women have been over time and the generation before us. And I think what's going on right now is we've had generations before us who have really set women up to really focus on education, to focus on success and independence. And we've had a generation of baby boom women up in managerial positions who have opened doors for us, even though, of course, there's areas where, it's limited and, women end up fighting for spots and whatever, but generally,
they kept the door open.
Yeah. So my example that I always give is the Barbie movie. There was some female executive in Mattel who basically guaranteed that there was an unlimited budget for a Barbie movie when others in Mattel were like, no, we need to cut this. And so there's always women around today in these different types of organizations who are trying to create more space for women's experiences, women's stories to be told. And it's happening more today than it ever has. And one of the things I think is really heartening today to see is there are a handful of women who have been trying to move up the traditional institutional system. And it's been a slow road. And so they've said, you know what, I don't want to wait until I'm 85 to like be able to make change in this traditional organization. And so, but I have resources. And so I'm going to go over here and do a parallel and, do a parallel structure, but that's formulated around the lives of women. So a couple of really clear examples of that is Reese Witherspoon. She started Hello Sunshine production company, and she did that because she was seeing Hollywood executives continually say no to stories that had heavy female leads and stories that expressed the real life experiences of women. So she started, a production company to produce some of these stories and to tell women's stories with much more depth and meaning than just, the one or two roles that women are assigned in traditional Hollywood. There's a couple of women who started a newsroom called The 19th, which is fantastic. And it's news written about women for women. In venture capital, there's a woman who started a Female Founders Fund, which is all venture capital. And she basically did it because she said, I was continually seeing venture capital folks dismiss women's ideas, and primarily because they were brought to them by women. And so she took advantage of that. She knew the ideas were good, and she started this fund so that she could have investors invest in these women's ideas, and they've been very successful. So I think one of the most exciting things about today and the times that we're living in is that women are recognizing the financial resources that they have, their ability to develop, environments and businesses and experiences that really speak to the way that women live their lives.
Yeah. I'm curious that how does Swiftynomics and what you described, how does it differ from what existed, I think, in the Sheryl Sandberg lean-in era, which was kind of like a pull yourself up by the bootstrap, trickle down, girl boss feminism? Like, what do you think is the distinction between those
and now
eras? Yeah. Eras, pun unintended.
Right, yeah. So the way that I differentiate it is I think the lean-in era was really about, like, if you just work harder, if you just try to persist longer, then you too can succeed. If you just, try to start creating a little bit of space for the way that you need to live within this large organization, that you can make it. And I think, for a lot of women that feels, especially young women, when they're not in a position of authority or power within the organization, that doesn't feel safe, that doesn't feel comfortable, it feels unattainable. And I think for me, and I think that this idea of Swiftynomics, like the thing that we need to do in society, so the way that I talk about it is the world outside of our homes was never built for us. It was never built for the ease of women.
Absolutely.
It was built for the ease of men or people who have something that I call care privilege, which is essentially you're an able-bodied adult and somebody else is washing your clothes for you or cooking your meals when you get home from work or
I always say I would love to have a wife.
Yes. So many.
I mean, great for my career if I had a wife.
Yeah. I mean, so many women who have really demanding and passionate careers say the same thing all the time.
And I have a very supportive spouse. That's the crazy thing about like, he's not a wife. Like, those are true.
Right. Exactly. And so I think what's different now is this idea that if you just lean in enough, you'll make it is really about you as an individual. Like if you do more. And what I think we need to start doing, and what I think I'm trying to describe in Swiftynomics, is it's not us that needs to change, it's the environment. And it's not that we need to struggle harder so that, essentially the lean-in movement is in some sense like make yourself look man enough and then you'll be able to succeed. Yeah. And I think that's a false hope. And it's a false aspiration. I think that the world outside of our homes needs to start looking more female enough so that we fit into it with more ease. And, that looks like flexible work. It looks like
remote work.
Affordable and accessible childcare. Like there's all these, and it also has a lot to do with the roles and expectations we have of men and women inside our homes as well.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I don't want to spoil the book too much, but you explain how economists ignore, and you say women's realities by assuming gender inequality will disappear once women begin looking more like men. That is once their characteristics align with those of men. But women are not men, and economists largely ignore the unique contributions. I'd love for you to explain what you call the pearl clutchers and the granolas.
Yes.
You describe these kind of like archetypes, and I'd love for you to explain them and how maybe Taylor or someone like myself fits into those archetypes you describe in the book.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I have this chapter in the book called Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince after her song. And it's a chapter where I take the example of the field of economics. Yeah. And I delve deep into the gender dynamics in the field of economics. And I do that because I'm an economist by training and I know a lot about this space. And I feel often that what happens in terms of gendered expectations and assumptions in the field of economics is very similar to what happens in the music and entertainment industry. With this idea that the leaders of the industries are, the executives of the industries are all generally older white men. There is a vibe that you're supposed to adhere to, and if you don't adhere to it, you don't move up. You don't,
cultural fit.
Yes, cultural fit. I mean, if ever lean in was, like in the field of economics, the pearl clutchers are the ones that lean in hard.
Yeah.
And they are successful because they really try to fit in with the current cultural expectations of the field. And then, the granolas are the folks that I describe in the book as like the women who started feminist economics, which is
I love the granolas.
Yeah. And it's like, and for me, I love them. And I love that this branch of economics called feminist economics exists, and that we are able to, have conferences together and build off of each other's research. But they're excluded from the dominant mainstream profession. And I want to exist in the dominant mainstream profession as who I am as a woman.
Yeah.
And so this is the struggle that I'm trying to fight for in this book. And I don't think it's unique to economics. I think it happens in so many industries across the board.
Yeah. And it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think there is an archetype of a woman who, she used to work in the workplace. She has children, and then she's like, I can't do it. Childcare's unaffordable, my schedule, et cetera, et cetera. She decides she's going to stay at home. And I think there's a certain economic class that woman actually gets pulled into like MLM world, which is actually quite exploitative, right? But she does have this enterprising spirit. She wants to do something, but she becomes siloed in another section of the economy. And I think what you're describing is like, we don't want women to become siloed and do this work that only relates to other women, or exchanging currency only with other women.
Yeah.
How do you like integrate the two where you can still be yourself, still be a woman, but be part of like the mainstream economic system?
Yeah. And like not feel bad because, so I'm a professor in a university. So there's quite a bit of I end up working a lot of evenings and weekends and, just on my research and whatever. And so I have flexibility to like pick up my kids from school or drop them off at school. And, I feel like if you're a woman in society today, you need a job that is really going to not shame you for having a family and having to balance differently work and family responsibilities. I feel like women need jobs that allow them to feel pride in both their job and their family, and at the same time, like multitask it all and in a way that doesn't fry them. And so, I think that's one of our challenges. We saw now in 2025, the beginning of the year was like all of this pullback from work from home, and, return to office became like this big, like bolsterous, like, male chest pounding CEO thing that we're going to do. And the federal government did it too. And it's really short-sighted, in my opinion, because I feel like it's a lazy way to manage your staff and your employees. But people get away with it because that's what they know. And so I think that what we really need to do is hold people more accountable for a happy and diverse workforce and meet employees like where they're at.
Yeah. While reading the book, something that kept coming to me, because a lot of my friends are single on paper and child-free, right?
Yep.
And they have their own pressures. I think millennial women in general just have burnt out because they were part of that lean-in generation, and now they're like, I need to pivot. Why is my life like this, right? So that's like child-free women are like, also, I don't want my work to be my life, right? So they have different reasons for wanting to see the mainstream workplace change.
Yeah.
But when I was thinking about Taylor Swift's trajectory, and I thought about the motherhood penalty, which economists have shown that, for each subsequent child, a woman loses more money and less life expectancy.
Yeah.
But does Swiftynomics exist if she had had a child at some point? That was something I kept thinking about.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
I mean, it still exists even if she had had a child?
100%. So, just look at Beyonce.
But look at Rihanna. Rihanna's not touring.
No, well, Rihanna has a fabulous makeup business.
No, but I'm saying that a lot of pop stars and a lot of women that have brands centered on their identity, some of them retreat because it just is harder. Like it looks different when you're like, and I'm somebody that went back to work as soon as I
did too.
And I'm pumping in the office.
Yeah.
But the idea of like a mother, like if she had made different choices, is it as linear and as simple and as freeing? Do people respond to her the same way, Taylor Swift as a mother?
Yeah. So, okay. I'll address the Taylor Swift thing, but first I'll say there's really interesting research in the field of economics in this space. And so there's an economist, Petra Mosier, and she did a paper with a colleague looking at, it's specific to innovation. So it's like looking at patents. And in this paper, they show that men, and it's normally about academics because academics patent more than other folks. But so it's like men peak at patenting, submitting and getting patents approved in their like late 20s. Women peak in their late 30s, early 40s. And, you know, you measure the number of patents you have as some like measure of productivity of how productive you are. And so you can imagine a scenario, and this is baby boomer women, by the way, that they did the study for. So you can imagine a scenario where women's patents are peaking later because they go through a time of childbirth and, you know, growing a family, and that is physically more demanding for them than it generally is for men, and especially in academia. There's like big gender divisions between what male professors are expected to do as parents versus female professors. But and people were frustrated when this study came out, and I was excited because, well, I think I was in my mid to late 30s at the time, and so I was like, yes, I have not peaked yet. You know, my kids are like 10 or 12, and I was like, yes, like the best is yet to come. And, you know, for me, I think one of the learnings of that is like, it is true that whenever you decide to start a family, that, you know, nobody's going to give you more than 24 hours in a day. Mm-hmm. You know, starting a family is demanding. And so, yes, it's true that lots of us need to slow down. Some of us choose not to slow down. Yeah. I didn't slow down either, like job-wise, because I'm an economist and I knew the stories about leaving the labor market. So, you know, I did the whole thing, you know, while working. But, you know, there are options. So you either do that and you burn out. Like I was always burnt out, always exhausted. I always crashed as soon as, you know, I'd be halfway into my kid's book and I'd crash. Or you slow down and you slow down and maybe you step out for a little bit and then you go back, or you just leave entirely. And all of those options are 1,000% acceptable.
Oh, I'm thinking less about Taylor as an individual, an idea, but how the world responds to motherhood, like whatever choice she makes, and how that would have shaped the trajectory of her career.
So when she got engaged, I heard lots of folks saying, oh, now her career's over. She's going to get married and she's going to have kids and we'll never see her again. Yeah. And I think she responded that by saying, you're all foolish. Like, why? Also,
ring sales went up or something like that, like something like searches.
Of course. Anything that touches her goes up. But I never had that concern. I thought it was kind of funny that people were saying that because, you know, Taylor is really motivated by her, innovative thinking. Her, you know, she's a creator, so she has ideas that come into her brain and she writes them down and whatever. And so I don't really see a situation in which, I mean, she may slow down, and maybe in the past, maybe there is no Swiftynomics if she would have slowed down earlier. But I think Taylor is more like, she will be more like you and I, which is she will keep the train moving at the same time as she's having children. And Beyonce, I think, did the same thing.
I mean, I think Beyonce's done some of her like greatest work, like from Renaissance to Cowboy. Yeah. Like Renaissance Cowboy Carter, I think like as a mother with kids who are slightly older, I'm in awe in how she's
Yes. Did you see her documentary?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that just tore my heart. Like I just, you know, it came out at the same time as the Eras Tour movie version. And I always loved Beyonce, but like after watching that documentary, I was like, thank you so much for sharing this piece of you with us, because it is so relatable. And, you know, it's something that so many mothers go through in terms of trying to figure out how to move your career and also be a family person and a mother. And, you know, and she talks about the struggles of being a Black CEO of this production. And, you know, it's hard. It's hard no matter what. And the thing that is hard about it is the way that outsiders perceive us. Yeah. And sometimes it maybe feels like whatever decision we make, it's going to get criticized. Right?
Yeah, there's no winning, really.
Yeah, and so in that sense, I think it's just really important to just be authentic and true with what it is that makes you feel the best at the time, and just block out all the noise.
I'm glad you brought up the racial component.
Yeah.
With Beyonce. Towards the end of 2025, an economist called Katisha Rowe reported that almost 600,000 Black women have been economically sidelined. And I'm curious about how, I guess, the contradiction, because I think Swiftynomics is also, there's a story of women with huge disposable incomes who can go to the Eras Tour, and I know the women who go to multiple dates, et cetera, et cetera. You also saw that with Beyonce's tour with like the more affluent fan base. But then we always have also have this story of women who are losing their job at unprecedented rates. Women, and this is not even Black women, just women in general, some of them didn't return to the workplace after COVID because they were mothers and they can't get a job again. So what does Swiftynomics look like for the woman that doesn't have the same privilege and the same access? Or I love in the book how you talk about Taylor's power of reinvention, because I think that's actually her superpower and I respect it so much. But for women that are like, I want to tap into that power of reinvention, but there are these systemic barriers that are making it harder. And that feels strange because we do know that we have a lot more disposable income and more opportunity than our mothers and grandmothers and great grandmothers. But for some women, it doesn't really feel that way.
I mean, I think it's such an important topic. And, it's especially in 2025, women's labor force participation has been down, but it's like really been down for Black women. And part of it has to do with like all of this kind of crazy dynamic going on in the federal government, and then the ripple effects of all of that. But one of the things that I think is really unique about Swiftynomics, or that I think is potentially relatable to everybody, is just this idea of, many of us have an experience where somebody around us who could help us move forward doesn't believe in our potential, doesn't believe that, we deserve to excel or we deserve to move into those spaces. And, I've had that in my life where I've had supervisors who, I've always been a builder and I've always wanted to lead and be a boss. And, and in some respects, maybe I'm a little bit like Taylor in that way. And so people will get mad because if I don't get my way, I'll find another way to do it. I think that's what Taylor does. And you don't have to have a lot of resources or money or superpowers, like to be able to assess your situation and figure out where it is you want to go, and then figure out who's in your way of getting you there. And then, so I'll give the situation of like, you have a boss who doesn't believe in you. In the short run, there's not much you can do maybe about convincing that boss otherwise. You could try to do extra work and try to convince them. And, but you, again, only 24 hours in a day. So you really have to be diligent about how you use your time. But instead of trying to convince that boss, which could be a slower or a dead end path, another alternative option is to really use that time instead to aggressively apply for other jobs in other spaces where there might be people who actually do see your potential and actually do know that you're capable. It's this idea of resilience. And so for me, it's about acknowledging the barrier. And, there are different barriers for everybody. Like racism is a clear barrier that happens for a lot of Black women. And so, knowing that it's there, that it's not about you, it's about them and their insecurities or their issues. But saying, okay, I see it. And so it's going to be harder for me to move forward, in this one path. Let me look around me and see who I have, who are my big supporters, who will, maybe, and it often comes in unexpected places, but then attaching yourself to that person or asking them to help you figure out and, strategize, or in my book, I call it masterminding.
Masterminding, yeah.
Your way, into that, you have an end game, right? You have a goal that you want to get to. And so the question becomes, how are you going to use your energy?
That thing you said about energy resonates with me so much, because even in my personal life or in my career, you expend energy when you're annoyed at a systemic barrier or a personal thing, which is fine. You can do that. But there is something to that preserving your energy and being like what you talk about in the book about the masterminding. Okay, how can I try and game this system so it works best for me? Right? Because the game is the game. And it's not going to change. Whether you're happy or angry, it's not going to change. So those type of maneuvers, which you describe how the moves Taylor's made, whether it's like, okay, I'm going to re-record all my songs, right? I'm going to that, which I loved. It was so spiteful because I want to do that. It's like, I'm going to re-record every single one of my songs. And then the fans are going to listen to those songs. I'm going to devalue
the originals,
the values of the originals, and then I'm going to buy them back, which is a long play. It's a long-term strategy. And it did start as like this letter where she's really angry and upset, but it's felt like after she wrote that letter and made it public, she started the masterminding game, which is something you go into in the book.
And I think one of the reasons why she's able to do that, like, okay, yes, her family has resources, But I think with Taylor, the piece that really is also important for her in her path and in her career is this ability to be persistent and to be really authentic. And so she's always been really focused on what do I want to do? What is the type of music that I want to create? Where do I want to go? And, and she's always been really good at taking these, she has faced a lot of sexism in her career, and
violent misogyny.
Yes.
A very violent misogyny.
Yes. And she, and maybe, and again, because she's human, just like the rest of us are, in the short run, maybe it, and she talks about this in some of the public interviews and documentaries she's done, but, in the short run, maybe it brought her down, maybe, it took her down for a minute. But then she kind of regrouped, and she's just so good at keeping the noise as this is the problem they have. It's not my problem to solve. And so they're going to react this way, but I want to do this. And so I'm just going to figure out a way to get around that noise to do this. And that's one of the biggest lessons I think we can learn from Taylor. And I think in terms of like human experience, those are strategies that are really employable for any of us. It's a mindset. And so, we control our minds. And so how do we think about this a little bit differently to get us further and closer to whatever our end goals are?
Yeah. So, Taylor Swift has masterminded the whole game. She's done it very well. She's probably one of the most successful artists to have ever lived, definitely top 5. Accrued a significant amount of wealth.
Yes.
And soft power, which is rare for a woman to be like a self-made billionaire and have that level of soft power.
Yep.
What would you say to the people that say that at the heart of Swiftynomics is a story of inequality, of wealth hoarding, of one getting everything and no one getting anything else? What would you say to that?
You mean in terms of like she's doing the wealth hoarding?
Just as a symbol, like she's got a plane. You know, like it's like
she does have a plane.
She does.
Yes.
I mean, I would love
maybe more.
I would
than
love
one.
to. I would love to have a friend with a plane or a plane myself. But you know what I mean? It's like these very significant, right? And so there's an inequality there, even within the pop culture world. Like most pop culture icons do not have a plane. They can maybe afford net jets every now and again, but they're not owning their own plane. So what about like just what she's managed to accrue just for herself?
Yeah, I mean, this is why people write business books about her, right?
Yeah.
This is why classes in business schools are taught about her. I have a couple of thoughts about it. One, I think what I'm looking at with Taylor is a millennial woman who tapped into an energy and a consumer power that nobody else so successfully identified, and now she's reaping the benefits of that. And so, in some sense, even though it's like a bunch of money in a larger pool going to like one woman, it's like, hey, who are we to criticize a woman who
don't hate the player, hate the game?
Yeah, exactly. But so in that sense, and then as an economist, I don't have any problems with Taylor having a plane if she has the resources for it. People get really upset that she sells multiple variants, and that's a whole marketing strategy. Like her marketing game is.
And as an economist, you're like, you
notch.
think that's great, like product differentiation, but the same product. You're just like, that's genius, right?
Well, listen, I mean, if you don't like that she's putting out 4 variants, don't buy it. And, if people didn't buy it, she wouldn't do it. And so, that's true. The market.
But as you said, she's tapped into this energy because she knows her base want to buy 5 versions.
Yeah. I mean, if she can get somebody to buy 4 variants of the same album instead of 1, like, good for her. Why not? Again, I'm an economist, so that's how we think. But, I will say the flip side of this is, Taylor has done so much within the communities that she, when she was on the Eras tour, putting so much money into, there was some town, I think it was in Ireland, where she gave money to a food bank, and they were like, this is enough money to fill up our food bank for a whole year.
I mean, in the book, you say Denver declared an additional 140 million. LA claimed 320 million in revenue boosting activity. London, my hometown, $314 million, which is an insane amount of money, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is all part
So
of.
it's trickle around, not trickle down, but there's a bit of a trickle around effect
Yeah.
to the Eris store, because that's like a shopkeeper.
Yeah.
It's just like local businesses.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole bunch of positive externalities with the Eras tour stopping in cities everywhere. And, she also does, she gave huge bonuses to the truck drivers of her tour. If you watch the 6-part docuseries, she gave huge bonuses to the dancers and the backup singers. And I think she cares about her fans. She cares about the community. She demonstrates that in various ways. I can't help it that she has so successfully tapped into a consumer base that has, a ton of discretionary spending and finds her music and her art really relatable and is willing to spend money on it. Like, good for her. And, then of course it always comes back to, would we be having this conversation if instead of Taylor, it was, name a male singer?
No, no way.
Yeah.
It wouldn't. But I think, and I'll say how I kind of, some of my favorite features from the Eras tour, I think it was GQ magazine did this really beautiful moving feature, and it's principally print photography, still photography, and it's dads and their daughters on the Eras tour.
Yes.
Right? I don't know if you saw it. And it's all these men who are like, I don't know what the hell this is, but she made me drive across time. And some of the girls weren't even in the stadium. Yeah. They were standing outside because there was a whole like subculture and people who couldn't get in the tour, who were watching the tour outside the tour. And it's like, it's one of my favorite features because it's very like the girls are from all like different races, tomboys, super girly, like kind of gothy. And it's all about them there with their dads. And then some of the dads are like, well, we became fans together during the pandemic. And what was interesting to me, I was like, oh, Taylor has tapped into a market of little girls who can get their parents to spend money. It's like, it's not so much about like millennial women's discretionary income. It's like Gen Z, younger Gen Z.
Yeah.
And they're like to their dad, you have to get me this.
So your kids are still young, but I've got teenagers, a boy and a girl. And let me tell you that my daughter, her ability to get money from mom and dad and to spend like crazy is like ridiculous. And so it's a legit, it's a legit thing. And for Taylor, it's like she's got moms today who grew up with her when they were adolescents, and now because of their re-records, their daughters and their sons are like experiencing Taylor, the young version of Taylor, again for the first time. And I think, talking about getting having so much money and becoming a billionaire, et cetera, like, who knew that the worst thing that could have ever happened to her in the world, which according to her is somebody selling the rights to her first catalog set. Who knew that would be one of the most influential components of her career that would really drive her into this billionaire status?
I mean, the thing I like about her most is that even when she loses, she wins.
Yeah.
I just, in the pop culture universe, I love that type of person.
Yeah.
I want to get into Taylor and Travis, and like, I hope the Swifties don't kill me. I don't know if they'll make it down the aisle. That's my current conspiracy theory. I don't think it's going to happen. I do think he's the love of her life, but something tells me it's not going to happen. But,
okay, let me tell you the controversy here. I could care less.
Okay, you could care less. Well, this is why you're on a pop culture. But now, I'm going to bring it back.
Okay.
I was interested about the Swiftynomics of it. I think they are emblematic of this dynamic where the man does well for himself, and this is no shade to Travis, but the woman is like stadiums above him.
Yeah.
And I know you don't follow like pop culture gossip mess. We call it oral history here.
Oh, no, gossip. I follow it.
But it started a whole discussion about prenups. I don't know if you've seen some of the stories, and people are like, there's women out there who are Taylor Swift fans who are like in their early 40s and have had their first divorce, and they're like, Taylor, you have to get a prenup.
Well, I mean, is there any doubt? I mean, there's no way that Taylor Swift, the business, allows her to get married without a prenup. Yeah. Like, I don't even think this is a discussion in their realm. But the one thing that I do really love about Taylor and Travis, and I also, no idea if they'll, I do hope they make it, because I had so much joy watching them start dating, and like, it was such a fun, and it's fun to watch them. And so I wish them all the happiness in the world. But also I don't, if they make it or not, I don't care personally, me as a person. But the one thing that I like about their relationship is, so in economics, we have this idea where, we call it production complementarities. And it's this idea where people partner up because they have opposite areas of expertise. And so in the household, it's like, and the traditional 1950s household that never really truly existed for anyone. But it's like, the man goes out and earns the money and becomes really, really good at earning the money. And then the woman stays home and takes care of the kids and family and becomes really, really good at so she can cook the dinner in half an hour where it would take him 2 hours. And so they each become efficient in these different spheres. And then that's why they partner up together, because then they can be more efficient as a household. That's the old economic theory. The new economic theory around this, because we force ourselves to learn this in the field of economics, knowing that it's not a reality for anybody today anyway, and probably never has been. But the new kind of thinking about this is people are partnering up not because of this production complementarities, meaning the way that you produce something is efficient, but because of consumption complementarities.
Tell me more.
Yeah, so you like to do the same things together. So you like to travel, you both like to travel. So you're going to partner up because, you'll have a good travel buddy, or you both like to sit at home and watch movies on Saturday nights. And so you partner up because of that.
And romantic, that's not like friends. Because I feel like that's a friend thing.
No, but you look for a romantic partner who also likes the same type of activities that you like.
Me and my husband don't like the same thing at all. I'm Christian, he's atheist. I want to go to church, he wants to stay at home. He likes video games, I hate video games. We just have the same value system.
Stop negating my theory.
It's not your theory. I'm just talking about myself. I'm just shocked that people exist like this. I just thought people got married for money.
Okay. No. Well, yes. Okay. So that you and your husband are probably like the old school
value
version.
System doesn't match. Do you have crazy people in your family? What type of crazy do they have?
Well, commonalities, right? Commonalities. You both know how to handle the crazy.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so if you think about this in economic terms, Taylor and Travis make the perfect example of this idea of the modern couple pairing up because of these entertainment or consumption commonalities, these things that they have in common. And so I think that's fun to watch. And also I really feel like the way that Travis comports himself in the public domain in terms of with his relationship with Taylor is the way that we really want all men to comport themselves, which is, I'm not threatened by you. We can have this relationship and I can be proud of your success.
I mean, who doesn't want a wife with a plane? I would want a wife with a plane. I would compliment her all the time.
Well, I mean, you'd be surprised, but there are a lot of traditional values that create these dynamics of power within relationships where, men are the ones who have the dominant power. And when economic power, and when they don't have that anymore, it feels really threatening.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then you get kind of either bad behavior or the relationship dissolves. And if we're gonna survive as a human race, if you think about birth rates are declining, people are less likely to marry and whatever. And if we're gonna survive all of those things, we need men to get more comfortable with getting into a relationship with an equal partner versus getting into a relationship with somebody who, where the men are still controlling and calling all the shots.
Do you want my fake? It's not even an economic theory. It's just a pop psychology theory of why she's with him. Taylor only likes winners. And he is a winner.
Yes, he is.
And he's at the height of his game. He gets the Super Bowl ring. She would never be with a guy that's on a team that loses. I don't know. I don't know enough about the NFL, but she doesn't want the team that comes at the bottom of their conference. She would never date a football player like that. He is a winner. And she was just winner. I want the winner. And I think that's what they have.
And he's fun.
He's fun, and he's also the best in his field. I think she has this thing about excellence. So she always wants the man that's the most excellent at the thing he does. And he's never going to sing. And she can never play football. But she's just that's what attracts her. That's my theory.
I agree with you that she's a perfectionist. And I think that your theory makes sense. But until I start looking at her past people that she's been with. A lot of losers? Yeah.
Exactly. Now she wants the winner. Now she wants the winner. But I'm also, and maybe this is the Nigerian mum in me speaking, she's stadiums above him economically.
Yes.
And so it's a risk for her. And that's why I think she loved him. That's why I do believe she loved him.
I think that it is really, really hard to be a financially successful superstar woman. I think it's really, really hard.
And Jay-Z's taken.
And Jay-Z's taken, and your choice set is really, really small.
Yeah. I mean, there's lots of weirdos in Silicon Valley who make tons of money and we don't know, anonymously wealthy men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she has lots of options. She just wants, like, there's something about the jock and the cool.
It's fun.
Cool girl. It is fun.
I love it. It's fun. I mean, it's fun just to watch for me, it's been like, whatever. I'm like a 50-year-old, whatever, but like, it's just fun to watch their relationship bloom, whether it's real or fake. I didn't even care. Like, I just had fun watching
You're into it. Before you go, this has been so great. I want to know what you'd say the future of Swiftynomics is.
Yeah.
Like, if we could, be an economic forecast
into the future. So I think if I could forecast into a future where Swiftynomics has been successful, what I see is more women owning their power, recognizing the power that they have within, letting less of the noise bother them, but rather pushing it aside and finding, the people around them who are their support system, and, not internalizing a system that wasn't set up or built for them, but rather recognizing that that's what it is, and then finding strategies to maneuver within that. It would be a world where women don't feel like they've failed in their career when they stop working because they're having kids. It would be a world where the number of women in economics is equal to the number of men in economics. I mean, just, I love my profession, no matter how, chauvinistic or whatever it might be. I love it. And I think economics is super interesting. And I really want more girls to get involved in the field. So,
I mean, this book is maybe the thing that helps.
I hope so. I mean,
because it's just like, to say that you could write a book about Taylor Swift through the lens of like economics. Sign me up.
Yeah. I mean, I teach a economics of Taylor Swift course. And this semester, it was like 3 guys and all girls. And the first day of class, and they all funnel out, and I'm putting my bag away, getting ready. And the next group for the next class funnels, and it's all men and like 3 girls. And I was like, hey, what class are you guys have? Introduction to Microeconomics. And I was like, man, this is so describing the situation that I'm trying to describe, which is if we just stop talking about widgets, we could get more girls interested in economics.
I love it. Misty, where can our audience find you?
So MistyHeggeness.com. I also have a page for the book, Swiftynomics.com. I'm on Instagram, Blue Sky, LinkedIn.
Thank you, Misty.
Thank you for having me. This has been great.